Chapter 1. The defiled portrait in Mayfair. The brilliant golden sunshine of a warm June afternoon washed over the smooth, cobblestone streets of Mayfair, the most opulent and fashionable district in all of London. At the magnificent townhouse of Lady Augusta Harrington, a bustling open-air tea party was underway in the grand gardens. The cream of the London ton had gathered in their finest attire under delicate white lace umbrellas, the soft murmur of polite laughter and the delicate clink of Wedgwood porcelain cups, echoing through the afternoon air, creating a familiar background melody of the high society. A gentle summer breeze carried the sweet scent of climbing roses and blooming jasmine, but the atmosphere within the garden walls was far from pleasant for Marianne Cole. She stood silently in the deep shadow of an ancient oak tree in a corner of the garden, trying to shield her worn cotton dress from the cold, mocking stares of the high-born ladies who populated the lawn. Marianne Cole stood quietly near the entrance of the stone veranda, her fingers clutching a battered wooden box that held her miniature painting tools, fine sable brushes and natural ivory plates. She wore a simple dress of faded gray cotton, its hem meticulously mended with tiny, invisible stitches, yet still failing to conceal the stark poverty of its wearer. Her wool gloves were frayed at the fingertips, and her modest straw bonnet was adorned with only a faded ribbon, making her look entirely out of place among the shimmering silk gowns and elaborate feather bonnets of the noble ladies. Since the sudden death of her beloved father, Charles Cole Aunce, a celebrated royal miniaturist and creator of fine portraits for the British royal family, Marianne had lost all status, wealth, and standing. Her father had been betrayed by a greedy art dealer, falsely accused of forging a portrait of the princess, and thrown into a debtor's prison, where he died of a broken heart soon after in absolute neglect and grief. To pay off her father's debts of honor, and to support her little sister Clara, Marianne was forced to hide her noble birth and travel across London to paint miniatures on cheap lockets for a meager living. Whenever she looked at a locket or held a clean ivory plate, a deep ache of sorrow and longing pierced her heart. She remembered the peaceful days in their small workshop in Bath, a sanctuary filled with the warm scent of linseed oil, natural varnish, and the rhythmic sound of the wood press. Her father had always taught her that a person's features were not just lines on a plate, but a reflection of their soul, and that the hands of a painter must always remain gentle and patient to find the perfect harmony of every detail, those microscopic details that ordinary people often overlooked. Yet the noble world of Mayfair had no room for such honesty and craftsmanship. They only valued ancient titles and massive dowries. Since her father's passing, the very people who had once visited their workshop, sipping tea and commissioning expensive family trees, had instantly turned their backs on her. They treated her like a social disease, whispering about the disgraced Cole family whenever she walked past their carriages. The grand oak doors leading to the garden swung open, and Lady Augusta Harrington stepped onto the terrace with the haughty arrogance of a woman accustomed to absolute authority. She wore a lavish gown of emerald green silk, her black lace fan fluttering rhythmically as she walked. Behind her followed a small group of young debutantes, whispering and giggling behind their fans as they caught sight of Marianne's impoverished appearance. Augusta stopped directly in front of Marianne, her cold eyes scanning the girl from head to toe with absolute disdain. "Oh, look who we have here," Augusta said, her voice dripping with aristocratic venom. "I was wondering why the butler had allowed such a ragged creature to stand in the hallway of my residence. It is none other than the daughter of Charles Cole, the disgraced miniaturist who forged a royal portrait and died in shame. Miss Cole, do you truly believe that the Harrington townhouse is a sanctuary for vagrants? Did you bring your pathetic box of cheap lockets here to offend our guests?" Marianne felt her chest tighten, Augusta's harsh words cutting like poisoned needles into the memory of her father and her family honor. Yet she stood straight, her clear blue eyes looking directly into the cold eyes of the powerful noblewoman. She curtsied low, observing the strict etiquette of the ton that her father had taught her. "My lady, I was summoned here by your house steward to paint portrait lockets for your guests," Marianne said, her voice quiet but steady. "I assure you that my miniature painting is of the highest standard, and I shall complete the work perfectly, without failing your expectations." "Craftsmanship?" Augusta laughed, a sharp cold sound that cut through the distant music of the violins. "Your father was dismissed from his royal duties because of his incompetence and greed. He ruined his family name, and now you think I would allow the daughter of a criminal to touch my fine lockets with hands stained with paint. Mayfair has no place for beggars. Your presence here only ruins the beauty of my tea party. The nobility of London cannot associate with the children of thieves." Augusta's insults cut deep and the surrounding crowd began to whisper, their mocking glances directed at the solitary girl. Marianne clenched her hands beneath her faded apron. She could bear the insults to her dress, but she could not remain silent while they defamed her father's memory. "My lady, my father was no criminal," Marianne said, her voice low but carrying a clear note of quiet dignity. "He was betrayed by greedy business partners who envied his talent. The truth of the Cole family will eventually be revealed. If you do not trust my skill, I shall leave at once, but I demand that you respect the memory of my father. You dare to raise your voice to me, you insolent beggar." Augusta snarled, stepping forward. With a swift, violent motion, she snatched the wooden box of writing tools from Marianne's hands and threw it onto the stone floor of the veranda. A loud, splintering sound echoed as the wooden box cracked open on the cold stone, scattering its precious contents across the damp floor. The delicate sable brushes which her father had personally carved, weighted and balanced with his own hands, along with the natural color pigments and the stone palette, the very last physical memory of her late father shattered on the stone flags. The dark black paint spilled across the wet stone, staining the broken brushes and ruining the delicate natural ivory plates she used for her portraits. The surrounding nobles laughed softly, a cruel and mocking chorus of agreement that drifted over the lawn. Marianne knelt on the cold stone, her hands trembling as she gathered the broken pieces of her life, refusing to let a single tear fall in front of her tormentors. She held her head high with the quiet dignity of an artisan, carefully picking up each broken ivory plate, her eyes fixed determinedly on the misty Mayfair sky, promising she would not let them break her spirit. Chapter 2. The different eyes and the blur amidst the moment when Marianne was kneeling on the stone floor, gathering the shattered pieces of her father's keepsakes under the mocking glares of the haughty nobles. A sudden silence fell across the garden as the main doors of the townhouse swung open. Nathaniel Harrington, the Duke of Stonehaven, entered with firm but leisurely strides. He wore a dark cloak covered in the dust of steep roads, his sharp-featured face cold as carved stone, and his storm-gray eyes carrying a deep, silent authority. The arrival of the most powerful man in Yorkshire immediately silenced the frivolous laughter. People stopped laughing, glasses in hand remained untouched as no one brought them to their lips, giving way to respect mixed with fear before the notoriously cold Duke. Nathaniel had just returned after a severe head injury from a carriage accident years ago that had taken his parents' lives. That accident had left him with a painful secret. He suffered from complete face blindness, prosopagnosia, leaving him unable to recognize anyone's face, including his own in the mirror or his closest relatives. He lived in extreme anxiety, always suspicious of those around him, only able to identify others by their voice, gait, or the smallest details of their attire. To Nathaniel, the world around him was a collection of blurred, faceless silhouettes. Whenever he entered a crowded room, a severe tension weighed heavily on his nerves. He could not distinguish between his greedy Aunt Augusta and the scheming ladies of society, nor could he identify the enemies plotting to find his weaknesses. To hide this terrible condition and protect the Harrington family's position, Nathaniel had trained himself through rigorous discipline. He memorized the metallic click of Harrison's pocket watch chain, the raspy tone of Solicitor Philip's voice, or the slightly left-leaning stride of his Uncle Archibald. However, that constant vigilance overloaded his brain, leading to severe, frequent headaches that tortured him under the bright candlelight of London high society gatherings. He could feel the sharp throbbing in his temples, a steady drumbeat of agony that matched the rhythmic ticking of the tall grandfather clock in the corner of the garden veranda. The sweet scent of jasmine and roses, which the guests praised so highly, felt suffocating to him, mixing with the phantom smell of mud and blood that always lingered in his memories of the battlefield. Nathaniel walked past the crowd of bowing nobles, his storm-gray eyes scanning the space, but for him, all the surrounding faces were just vague, empty and indistinguishable patches of color. The throbbing headache from the stress began to torture him again, forcing him to tighten his grip on his silver-headed black oak cane. He stopped when he saw a young girl kneeling on the wet stone floor of the villa veranda. Although he could not see her face clearly, Nathaniel was drawn to the determination emanating from her straight back and the rhythmic movements of the girl's hands. She did not cry, nor did she kneel to beg for mercy from the aggressive Augusta. Instead, she was meticulously picking up the broken ivory plates with a strange, respectful attitude. Marianne picked up an ivory plate that was cracked in half, on which she was sketching an unfinished portrait of a middle-aged gentleman. Instead of trying to repaint the facial features, which had been smeared by the color, she used a fine sable brush to draw a sharp stroke, highlighting the uniquely serrated sideburns and the triangular mole near the right earlobe of the man. She muttered to herself in a warm, soft voice, "The face may change with time and expression, but the structure of the ear and this hairline are immutable. Just by looking at these strokes, one will recognize him without ever being deceived by the false layer of skin." Nathaniel was deeply shaken when he heard her words. Those were precisely the non-facial identification markers that he always had to memorize to survive in the noble world full of enemies. This girl was not just painting. She was looking at the world using the very same method he used to recognize people. But she did it with an artistic understanding and a precision down to the millimeter on the tiny ivory plate. He stepped closer, bending down to pick up the sable brush that had fallen near his foot and handed it to her. "Do you truly believe that the ear structure and the hairline are immutable signs to identify a human being?" Nathaniel asked in a low, clear voice that contained extreme wonder. Her voice, when she raised her head to answer, had a strange, warm frequency that calmed his nerves. Marianne looked up at the notoriously cold Duke, sensing the sternness but absolute lack of disdain in his eyes. She bowed her head slightly. "Your Grace, the face is the easiest thing to deceive people. But the ear bone's structure, the hairline, and the small birthmarks are the unique traces that God has carved onto each person. They never change, even if they grow old or try to disguise themselves. If we record them accurately, no impostor can ever deceive us." Augusta quickly rushed over, offering a fake smile to cover up her cruel behavior. "Nathaniel, you have returned. Do not bother with this Cole girl. I am having the servants throw her out immediately. The daughter of a royal art forger has no right to stand here and defile your sight." "Silence," Nathaniel growled softly, his voice containing the terrifying authority of the family head, which immediately silenced Augusta, her face flushing with humiliation before the whispering guests. Nathaniel did not even look at his aunt. His eyes remained fixed on Marianne. He realized that this girl possessed eyes that could see the microscopic details that others purposely ignored. Something he had been desperately searching for. A miniature portrait painter with the ability to analyze non-facial identification was the only person who could help him create a reference booklet of all the nobles in the region to protect himself from conspiracies. "Miss Cole," Nathaniel said, his gloved hand gently helping her to her feet. "I require a personal portrait painter to manage my gallery and draw the identification notebooks at my Stonehaven estate in Yorkshire. I shall pay you £100 a year and provide lodgings at the castle if you agree to accompany me to Yorkshire today. I believe your hands and your eyes will do this work. Your father's reputation does not dictate the value of your brushstrokes today." £100. It was a fortune, enough to pay off her father's immediate debts, buy back the old Cole family workshop in Bath, and support her little sister Clara. She looked into his cold but sincere gray eyes, feeling a sense of true respect for her craft, rather than patronizing pity. She curtsied respectfully. "I am honored, Your Grace. I am ready to leave." Nathaniel turned to his butler Harrison. "Harrison, prepare the carriage at once. We leave London for Yorkshire before sunset." He walked away, leaving Augusta standing frozen in silent fury as the guests began to whisper. Chapter 3, The Silent Fortress of Yorkshire. The Harrington carriage rolled for 3 days and nights over rough roads, leaving the glittering lights and polite conversations of London behind for the wild north. Throughout the long journey, Marianne sat opposite the silent Duke, the space between them filled with a quiet tension. He rarely spoke, his eyes closed or staring out the carriage window as the landscape changed from the green fields of the south to the rocky valleys and thick fogs of Yorkshire. Marianne noticed his brow furrow in pain, and his gloved right hand was always clenched around his silver cane. She understood he was silently enduring the agony of his old wound. The Duke's loneliness seemed even deeper than her own. Every time the carriage hit a bump, his knuckles whitened. Marianne realized that the loneliness and burden of this Duke seemed even deeper than her own when looking at the wild, misty valleys outside. She tried asking him about the route in a soft voice, and strangely, every time he heard her gentle voice, Nathaniel's tense expression relaxed a bit, the warmth of her tone acting like a soothing balm to his frayed nerves. When the carriage turned onto the narrow road running along the gray cliffs covered in thick fog, the Stonehaven estate appeared like a giant stone fortress, majestic but gloomy and cold. The wind howled constantly through the ancient stone watchtowers, making a low, sad sound like the sigh of history. This ancient castle was built in the 14th century, where gray stone and moss covered every corner, bringing a sense of complete isolation from the outside world. This ancient castle had been built by the early Harringtons during the War of the Roses, its thick granite walls surviving centuries of sieges and bitter northern winters. The stone gargoyles perched high on the battlements looked down like silent sentinels, their worn faces covered in moss and black lichen, witnessing the arrival of another generation. Harrison, the loyal butler with a stern face but kind eyes, opened the carriage door and held an umbrella for Marianne. She shivered slightly in the cold wind, carrying the moisture of the wild Yorkshire valley, her simple cotton dress offering little protection against the elements. Nathaniel got down from the carriage after her, his black cloak fluttering in the wind. His cold face looked at the ancient castle. Yorkshire does not have Mayfair's warm tea parties or fake flattery. Miss Cole, there is only fog, grey stone, and cold silence here. I hope you do not regret coming to this desolation. Your Grace, I seek quietness to do real work, not false words. Marianne looked into his eyes, her voice warm and steady echoing in the cold wind. I am the daughter of a portrait painter. I am used to difficulties. The silence of Yorkshire is a privilege for me, where my hands can create without being judged by others. Nathaniel nodded slightly, a gleam of approval in his grey eyes. He led her through the large oak doors into the grand hall of Stonehaven Castle. In the center of the hall was a large stone staircase, and ancient iron suits of armor standing guard in the dark. The cold and dark atmosphere filled the space. The wide grey stone corridors hung with portraits of the Harrington ancestors under the dim candlelight. The silence in the castle was heavy, as if time had stopped since the death of his parents. The high stone walls seemed to echo with the memories of past generations, whispering secrets to the wind and intensifying the feeling of isolation. However, Marianne's arrival at Stonehaven was not welcomed by the other servants. The maids and housekeepers, under the secret influence of Lord Archibald, the Duke's greedy uncle, began to whisper. They looked at her with suspicion and disdain when they learned she was the daughter of Charles Cole, who had a reputation as an art criminal in London. They put her in the smallest, simplest attic room, where the wind blew through the wooden door frames, creaking all night. However, Harrison secretly intervened. He brought her a small copper stove, a pot of hot tea, and a few slices of Yorkshire ginger cake to keep her warm. Harrison looked at her with concern. Miss Cole, I apologize for the simple welcome of the estate. Our Duke has lived in isolation for too long since the accident. He trusts no one, and bringing you here is an exception. Please be patient with him. Marianne smiled warmly. Thank you, Harrison. The attic room is perfect for me. The light from the large arched window is very suitable for grinding ivory and mixing colors. I do not need luxury. I only need peace to restore the family gallery. The next afternoon, Marianne began her work in the ancient gallery in the east wing of the castle. On the large mahogany writing desk were piles of family manuscripts and portraits, many of them moldy and faded. She gently glided her hands over the old paintings, using mild solvents like turpentine and alcohol to clean the accumulated dust without harming the original paint. She looked at Nathaniel, who had quietly entered the room, her eyes full of understanding. Your Grace, these portraits are the life and honor of your family. They do not deserve to be buried in dust. I promise you, with my hands, I will restore every stroke of this gallery to its clearest state. The sound of my brush will bring a quiet rhythm to your life. Nathaniel looked at her slender, gentle hands working hard, listening to her warm voice like spring water calming his nerves. For the first time in years of loneliness, a faint hope lit up the Duke's dark soul in the Yorkshire fog. As night fell over the valley, Nathaniel left, but Marianne decided to stay in the gallery for a few more hours. Under the flickering candlelight and the silver moonlight shining through the window, she carefully opened her father's wooden box. She arranged the delicate ivory plates, ground them flat, and prepared the mineral colors. She thought of Nathaniel's gray eyes that looked straight at her, but were completely empty because he could not recognize faces. Marianne felt a deep sympathy for the silent agony this powerful man had to bear. She stroked her family locket, promising to use her talent to be his truest eyes, helping him uncover the conspiracies surrounding Stonehaven Castle. She cleaned the dust off the mahogany table, burned a bit of incense, and began sketching the first drafts of the servants, focusing on their unique features. Chapter 4. The quiet brushstrokes of the night. Marianne's work at Stonehaven Castle fell into place under the quiet support of Harrison. Every day she spent hours at the mahogany desk in the library, surrounded by family ledgers, estate maps, and a brass magnifying glass. The library was a massive room, filled with floor-to-ceiling shelves of old leather-bound books, smelling of aged paper and dried ink. Her task was not only to restore the cracked oil portraits of the Harrington ancestors, but more importantly, she was secretly building the identification reference book for Nathaniel. This was a task requiring sharp observation and absolute secrecy. Marianne observed every servant who passed through the corridor, and every tenant who came to pay rent. She did not paint their entire faces. She sketched the unchanging details, a crescent-shaped scar on the gardener's hand, the way the head chef always buttoned his coat one button off, Harrison's worn silver signet ring, or the stable boy's forward-leaning stride. She spent hours grinding the natural pigments on a glass slab, mixing lapis lazuli for the deep blue of the velvet coats, ochre and sienna for the warm skin tones, and lead white to capture the delicate reflection of light on the ivory. Every color was prepared with the utmost care, ensuring the paint would remain vibrant for decades. Every stroke was executed with intense concentration, her hands moving the brush gently and rhythmically over the parchment. She used natural mineral colors mixed with resin to create a thin, glossy layer that would not fade over time. In the silent room, the only sound was the scratch of her brush and the crackle of the wood in the fireplace. She felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that this reference book was the only weapon Nathaniel had to defend his heritage. The soft candlelight flickered against the ancient stone walls of the library, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of the past, creating a quiet sanctuary where she could paint without fear. The process of miniature painting required Marianne to keep her breathing steady and her mind quiet. She placed the small ivory plate in her palm, using a sable brush of only 3 hairs to draw under the magnifying glass. She noted beside each sketch the non-facial indicators, Harrison's sideburns curved sharply forward, or Mrs. Gable's limp due to rheumatism. Every detail was recorded with absolute precision. The quiet library was filled with the soft scent of lavender and old paper, a combination that Marianne found incredibly soothing, helping her focus on the microscopic details of her work. One late afternoon, as the pale sunset of Yorkshire cast long shadows through the arched window, Nathaniel entered the library and sat on the armchair opposite her desk. He looked at the reference booklet containing the detailed sketches of his servants, his expression unreadable, but his eyes filled with a deep, silent focus. "Can you truly see these tiny details in just a few seconds, Miss Cole?" Nathaniel asked, his voice low, his gray eyes fixed on her slender hands as she held the magnifying glass. Marianne looked up at him. She smiled gently and set her brush down. "Your Grace, my father always taught me that people focus too much on the overall features of a face, which are easily changed by age, illness, or expression. But the structure of the ear, the hairline, and the placement of small moles are permanent marks carved by God. If we record these details accurately, no imposter can ever deceive us. My brush is merely recording the truth that others choose to ignore." Nathaniel sighed softly, clenching his gloved hands. "The truth. For me, this world is a series of faceless shadows filled with lies. After the carriage accident at 12 that took my parents' lives, I woke up to find everyone's face had become a blank fog. I could not recognize my own reflection, let alone my relatives. I have lived for 16 years in constant fear, pretending to know everyone while trusting no one, always waiting for the next betrayal. The head injury took my sight, but your brush, Marianne, is the first thing that has brought clarity to my dark world." Marianne listened, her heart tightening at the agony and loneliness the Duke had endured since his youth. She gently touched the edge of the booklet, her voice warm. "I understand, Your Grace. But from now on, you will not face that fog alone. This booklet, my eyes, and my brush will guide you. I will draw every enemy and friend with their most permanent marks, so no one can use a mask to deceive you again. If you trust me, my hands will sketch the world clearly for you." Nathaniel looked at her, his cold gray eyes softening. He leaned forward, his voice low. "In this plotting aristocratic world, Marianne, people only wait for my mistake to tear Stonehaven apart. Uncle Archibald has sent spies disguised as servants to search my mining ledgers. If they knew I was face-blind, they would trick me into signing away my power. I have lived in that extreme tension for 16 years, pretending to know everything, but empty inside." For the first time in years of suspicion and high defense, he felt a deep, genuine soul connection with a woman. The social distance between them seemed to vanish in the cold Yorkshire night. Nathaniel looked into her eyes, wishing to engrave her warm voice in his mind, finding a quiet sanctuary in her presence that he had never known before. Nathaniel looked at her, his gray eyes watching her with a quiet, hidden intensity as he stood up to depart. "Marianne, your presence at Stonehaven has brought a quiet peace I thought I had lost forever. Thank you for your eyes, and for your devotion to this work." He rose, leaving a small box of honey sweets and a soft teal woolen scarf on the table, and quietly departed, leaving a quiet scent of lavender. Chapter 5. Redeeming her father's portraits. The peace at Stonehaven Castle was shattered when Lord Archibald Harrington, Nathaniel's greedy uncle, suddenly arrived with a retinue of followers. Archibald had always coveted the inheritance of the iron mines and the Stonehaven estate, and he was extremely suspicious of Nathaniel's sudden decision to bring a poor girl from London to act as his private painter. Through his informants in London, Archibald had quickly investigated the true identity of Marianne Cole, the daughter of Charles Cole, who had been disgraced as a royal art criminal and died in debtor's prison. He wanted to find any weakness in Nathaniel's house to overthrow him. One morning, while Nathaniel was out patrolling the iron mines in the valley, Archibald blocked Marianne's path in the stone corridor leading to the ancient art gallery. He stood before her with a portly frame, wearing a lavish silk cloak, but his eyes were filled with malice and cruelty. He looked at her with a smug grin, knowing he held a dangerous secret. "Oh, look who we have here," Archibald sneered, his voice loud enough for the surrounding housemaids to hear. "It is none other than Marianne Cole, the daughter of Charles Cole, the swindler who forged the royal decree and the portrait of the princess. Did you truly believe you could hide your filthy identity under the title of the Duke's private painter? The daughter of a disgraced debtor fleeing from Mayfair creditors dares to stand in this noble Stonehaven castle. What a massive stain upon our Harrington family name. You are nothing but an intruder in this grand estate." Marianne went pale at Archibald's sudden attack, but she stood straight, her hands tightening around her paintbrush to maintain her dignity. "Lord Archibald, I am here working under a legal contract with the Duke. My father's honor was defamed by treacherous business partners who envied his talent, and I believe the truth will soon be revealed. Please maintain a minimum level of respect. I have done nothing underhanded to deserve such insults from you. My work here is honest, and I will not be intimidated." "Respect?" Archibald stepped closer, leaning his menacing face near her, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "The Yorkshire nobility will protest vehemently if they learn that Nathaniel is harboring a criminal like you. But I can help you keep this secret, and even help your little sister Clara have a comfortable life, if you agree to do one thing for me. Report back to me on all of Nathaniel's activities, especially the financial ledgers of the iron mines and the list of people he meets. Otherwise, I shall expose your true identity to the entire local nobility tomorrow, and you will be thrown into debtor's prison along with your sister. Do not think Nathaniel can protect you forever. He is a wounded soldier who can barely manage himself." Marianne looked directly into Archibald's eyes, her gaze filled with disdain and resolve. She did not tremble before his cruel threats. "I would rather suffer the unjust judgment of society than become a traitor who sells out the man who saved me and respected my craft. I refuse your filthy offer, Lord Archibald. Though my father died in poverty, he kept his soul clean, and I shall do the same. You may threaten me all you like, but I will never betray his grace." Augusta and Archibald prepared to use their family authority to order the servants to drag her out, but at that moment the sharp click of the silver-headed black oak cane, striking the stone floor, echoed authoritatively from the grand hall entrance. Nathaniel Harrington entered, his face cold as ice, radiating an overwhelming authority that silenced the entire hall. He had overheard the entire conversation through his sensitive hearing. He did not need physical violence or brute strength. The sheer silence of his presence as he crossed the threshold made his uncle and aunt stop laughing, the glasses in their hands freezing. He stood tall, his gaze sweeping the corridor with icy fury. Nathaniel walked up and stood beside Marianne, shielding her behind his broad back, his storm-gray eyes cutting like knives as he looked at Archibald. "Uncle Archibald," Nathaniel spoke coldly, his tone low but carrying supreme menace. "The authority to decide who stays or leaves here at Stonehaven belongs to me, the Duke of Stonehaven. Miss Marianne Cole is a private painter under my legal protection. Any threat or insult directed at her will be treated as a direct challenge to my title and authority. Do not force me to use the law to evict you from this estate. Your presence here has exceeded its welcome." Archibald laughed maliciously to save face. "Nathaniel, you are being deceived by her. She is the daughter of a massive debtor. All of the Cole family assets have been confiscated. Keeping her here will tarnish the Harrington name. The entire ton will laugh at us. Do you believe a minor debt in London society can trouble me?" Nathaniel smiled coldly. He turned to his butler Harrison. "Harrison, prepare the carriage at once. I shall ride to London to meet Solicitor Phillips. We shall see whose name is tarnished." That very day, Nathaniel rode swiftly back to London through the freezing Yorkshire rain. At the solicitor's office in Mayfair, he signed a banknote of £4,000 from his personal account outside the entail to clear all of the debts of Marianne's father, retrieving all the Prosserif notes and dismissing all civil judgments against the Cole name. Furthermore, he paid an additional £2,000 to redeem the old portrait and locket workshop of her father in Bath, legally transferring the ownership directly to Marianne Cole under the restored business name, Cole and Sister. He also ordered Solicitor Phillips to gather evidence to sue Silas Croft, the corrupt art dealer who had framed her father years ago. When Nathaniel returned to Stonehaven 2 days later, he entered the art gallery and placed the legal documents and the key to the Bath workshop on the table before Marianne. "From today, Miss Cole," Nathaniel spoke warmly, his storm-gray eyes looking at her gently. "You no longer owe anyone a single penny, and the old workshop of your father in Bath belongs entirely to you. Your father's honor will be cleared by the law. You deserve to stand proudly before Mayfair society, without anyone having the right to threaten or look down upon you. I have cleared all of your debts in London. The name Cole is free." Marianne looked at the key and the legal documents that had wiped out her family's debts. Her shoulders trembled with emotion, warm tears rolling down her cheeks, but these were tears of liberation and supreme gratitude. She choked on her words, her hands clutching Nathaniel's gloved hand. "Your Grace, I do not know how I can ever repay such an immense favor. You have given me my life back. You do not need to repay me with money, Marianne." Nathaniel gently squeezed her hand, his voice warm and sincere. "Your brushstrokes and your eyes are the most precious things to me. As long as you remain by my side and act as my eyes, that is the greatest compensation. Together, we shall face whatever lies ahead." Chapter 6. The blizzard in the ancient library. A terrifying blizzard suddenly swept down upon the wild Yorkshire Valley. The wind howled constantly through the ancient stone crevices of Stonehaven Castle, slamming against the tall arched glass windows and creating terrifying roars that seemed to tear through the freezing night. The heavy snow completely blocked all entrances to the estate, turning the ancient castle into a solitary fortress in a white desert. In the dark study in the West Wing, Nathaniel Harrington sat in a leather armchair before the fireplace, but his face was contorted in extreme panic. The shadows danced on the walls like demons, tormenting his mind. The roaring wind outside triggered the auditory wounds and psychological trauma of his childhood accident. In his mind at this moment was the deafening explosion of thunder, the splintering wood of the carriage, and the screams of his parents before they died. A pounding headache erupted violently, blurring his already vague world. As night enveloped the room and darkness took over, his face blindness left him completely disoriented. Nathaniel saw black shadows moving on the stone walls, cast by the flickering fire. To him, those faceless shadows looked like the murderers of his past, returning to finish him. He gasped for air, his chest tightening from the lack of oxygen, his silver dragon-headed cane falling onto the carpeted floor. The proudest and most powerful Duke of Yorkshire was now completely helpless and terrified in the faceless darkness of his own mind. A crushing loneliness enveloped him. There was no one beside him who understood this terrible torment. He felt completely abandoned in the dark. Marianne Cole was in the library nearby sorting the old drawings. Hearing the loud sound of the cane hitting the floor and the painful gasping coming from Nathaniel's study, she immediately set down her lamp and ran swiftly to the west corridor. She pushed the door open to find the tall form of Nathaniel slumped in the leather chair, his entire body trembling violently. "Nathaniel, can you hear me?" "Look at me," Marianne called out in alarm, her voice warm and ringing out to cut through the blizzard outside. She knelt beside his armchair, ignoring all noble etiquette. She could see the sheer terror in his eyes and knew she had to calm him. Nathaniel could not see clearly who was entering. He only saw a vague, faceless silhouette approaching him. In his panic, he tried to push her away. "Get away from me. Do not touch me. Who is there? Do not think you can steal this estate. I cannot see your face. Stay away." But Marianne did not retreat. She stepped closer, her gentle, warm hands reaching out to hold Nathaniel's cheeks. At the same time, she took his trembling, gloved hand and pressed it against her chest, so he could feel her heartbeat and the warm breath from her body. "Nathaniel, it is me, Marianne," she spoke in a warm, incredibly gentle voice, each sentence spoken rhythmically and slowly to calm his nerves. "There are no enemies here. This is your safe Stonehaven Castle. The storm outside will soon pass. Listen to my voice, feel the warmth of my hands. I am here to protect you. No one can harm you anymore. Trust me, Nathaniel." The gentle warmth from Marianne's hands flowed into his cheeks, and her warm voice resonated like a magical tuning fork that silenced the roars in Nathaniel's mind. The neurological spasms slowly subsided and his breathing began to stabilize. His storm-gray eyes slowly opened, looking at the girl kneeling beside him. Although he still could not see her face clearly, the gentle touch of her hands and her warm voice were the unique markers that allowed him to recognize her instantly among thousands of people. She stood there steadfastly and gently shielding his exhausted soul. Nathaniel rested his head lightly against her shoulder, sighing in relief. "Marianne, is it truly you? I am sorry for showing such weakness and madness before you. I could not control my fear when the darkness fell and the blizzard roared in my ears. The accident of my youth remains a mental scar too large for me to overcome alone. I feel so helpless in this fog." "You are not weak or mad, Nathaniel." Marianne gently stroked his hair, holding him close in the warm space before the fireplace. She felt his body slowly relax under her embrace. "You are simply carrying a pain too great from the past, a burden that no ordinary person could have endured for so many years. Let me share that pain with you. From now on, you do not need to wear that cold and solitary mask before me. Let me be your eyes, the protector of your truth. We shall carry this weight together." Nathaniel took her gentle hands, confessing his deepest secret in a raspy, emotional voice. "Marianne, you are the only one at Stonehaven who knows of my face blindness. I have had to live in this cold shell for 16 years to defend myself against this cruel, noble world. I cannot recognize anyone, not even my Aunt Augusta or Uncle Archibald, but whenever I hear your warm voice and feel the gentleness of your hands, the faceless fog in my head completely vanishes. You are my eyes, the only quiet truth I trust in this life. Do not leave me, Marianne. Promise me you will stay here by my side." Marianne was deeply moved, her heart beating rapidly at the sincere and vulnerable confession of the proud Duke. She squeezed his hand, her blue eyes glistening with tears as she looked into his storm-gray eyes. "I am not going anywhere, Nathaniel. My hands will always be here to guide you, and my brush will always record every truth for you. No matter how fierce the blizzard, or how cunning Archibald's plots, we shall face them together. I promise you this." They sat silently together before the crackling fireplace, the warmth spreading through the small room to banish the cold of the storm howling outside the ancient castle. Their hands remained interlocked, no more words were spoken, but the bond between their souls had become stronger and deeper than ever. This was the truest slow burn moment, marking the beginning of a healing love amidst the misty Yorkshire Valley. Chapter 7. The trap of the fake fiancé. The fierce blizzard that had ravaged the Yorkshire Valley finally passed, leaving Stonehaven Estate covered in pristine white snow under a freezing, biting wind. The warm, brief peace between Nathaniel and Marianne in the library was quickly shattered when Lord Archibald Harrington and Lady Augusta set a new, sophisticated trap to seize the inheritance of the Yorkshire iron mines. This time they did not resort to crude threats of debt or property seizure. Instead, they directly brought to Stonehaven Castle a poised, elegant young lady, introducing her as Lady Beatrice Vance, Nathaniel's childhood fiancée who had long been out of contact, according to the old betrothal contract between the two powerful families. The London newspapers had already published rumors of Lady Beatrice Vance's return, describing her as the long-lost heiress of a grand house, which only added to the credulity of the Mayfair society. She wore a heavy cloak of dark red velvet lined with fine fur, displaying a wealth that seemed to demand immediate respect from the Yorkshire tenants. In truth, Archibald and Augusta had secretly investigated and realized that Nathaniel's severe head trauma from years ago had left him with complete face blindness, though he always tried to hide it under a cold, majestic exterior. They knew he could not use his eyes to verify whether this was the real Beatrice, as he had no visual memory of her face. The impostor was a young woman named Amelia, from a ruined, desperate family in London, whom Archibald had bribed with a massive sum of money and meticulously trained for months on all the habits, childhood memories, and mannerisms of the real Lady Beatrice to prepare for this performance. She carried a miniature portrait of Beatrice as a child in an exquisitely crafted golden locket, claiming it was the token of betrothal exchanged by their parents years ago, a physical proof that they knew Nathaniel could not verify with his eyes alone, hoping to force him into a marriage that would surrender the Yorkshire iron mines to their control. In the secondary drawing room in the west wing of the castle, Archibald and Augusta sat enjoying tea with smug satisfaction. Augusta took a sip of hot Earl Grey tea, a cunning smile playing on her lips. "Archibald, I have sent letters to all the major families in Mayfair and the family council in London. The signing ceremony at the Royal Gallery will take place in the presence of Magistrate Higgins and the entire family council. Nathaniel will have no way out. If he dares to refuse to sign or delay the wedding, his reputation will be instantly ruined, and the nobility will suspect his mental capacity after his childhood accident. His title and estate will shake. He will be forced to yield to us. We shall strip him of everything." Archibald nodded greedily. running his fingers over the iron mine contract. Indeed, Augusta, that face-blind boy can never distinguish Beatrice himself. This time, the entire inheritance and financial assets of Stonehaven iron mines will fall right into our hands, and he will be forced to sign to save himself. The arrival of the fake Lady Beatrice threw life at Stonehaven Estate into complete chaos. She arrived in a lavish carriage with a dozen expensive trunks, intentionally projecting the haughty, luxurious manner of a high society Mayfair debutante. The servants and maids under the estate management were quickly deceived by the registry documents, family tree, and fluent accounts of childhood memories that Archibald presented. Harrison, though suspicious, could find no legal reason to reject her. Immediately, Archibald summoned an emergency meeting in the grand drawing room of the castle, pressing Nathaniel to sign the marriage settlement that would transfer control of the Yorkshire iron mines to the Vance family, under the guise of wedding preparations. "Nathaniel, my boy," Archibald spoke with a sinister smile, his deep voice carrying a false, booming authority and detestable calculation. "Lady Beatrice has traveled all the way from London to fulfill the dying wish of your parents. The betrothal between the Harrington and Vance families is sacred and legally binding. This portrait locket is the clearest proof of your childhood affection. You cannot break your oath and tarnish the Harrington name before the family council and Magistrate Higgins, who sit here as witnesses." Amelia, under the name of Beatrice, stepped forward in an expensive light pink satin gown. She spoke in a sweet, melodic, but entirely foreign voice. "Your Grace, I have waited 15 years for this day. I hope you still remember the promise you made, by the Mayfair pond, when we were children running under the oak trees. I have kept this locket close to my heart all these years." Nathaniel sat in silence in the high-backed oak chair, his face cold as carved stone. His gray eyes looked directly at the woman claiming to be Beatrice, but in his faceless world, she was only a blurred silhouette, an empty mist that could not be identified. A dull headache flared up violently in his brain from the extreme stress. He listened to her voice, melodic and sweet but cold, entirely foreign, lacking the warm frequency of his childhood memories, or the gentle voice of Marianne that calmed his nerves. Yet he had no physical evidence to reject her without exposing his face blindness before Magistrate Higgins. His knuckles whitened as he gripped his black cane. He felt the trap slowly closing around his title. Marianne Cole stood quietly in the dark corner of the drawing room, observing the entire scene. With the eyes of a miniaturist accustomed to viewing the world through a magnifying lens, she studied the girl self-identifying as Beatrice. She noticed that the shape of her ears was very round, and her hairline was straight, completely different from the childhood sketches of Lady Beatrice she had seen in the family archives. Furthermore, the miniature portrait in the locket Archibald presented had very sharp, rough brushstrokes, lacking the softness and delicacy of genuine Regency natural ivory portraits. She immediately realized this was a massive conspiracy to corner Nathaniel. Marianne glanced at Nathaniel, seeing the extreme tension in his shoulders and the strain in his gray eyes. She promised herself she would use her own eyes and craft to shatter this wicked trap and protect the man who had respected her talent. She knew she had to find concrete evidence in the castle's archives before the official signing took place in London, under the protective care of His Grace. Chapter 8. The drawing on the heirloom locket. That night, Stonehaven Estate sank into a silent, cold stillness. Marianne secretly slipped into the ancient archives and family registry room in the basement of the castle, aided by the silent protection of Harrison. The archives were located deep beneath the stone arches, where the cold stone walls held the damp chill of Yorkshire. Marianne searched patiently through old oak chests covered in dust, which held the artistic records and family documents of the Harrington line from decades ago. She turned page after page of old files, locket designs, and ancestral drafts under the flickering candlelight of the late night, her hands moving carefully so as not to damage the fragile documents. The damp air of the basement archives was heavy with the smell of old parchment and decaying leather. The dust lay thick on the iron bands of the oak chest, rising in small clouds that flickered like gold dust in the warm candlelight. Marianne worked with absolute patience, turning the dry pages with gloved fingers so as not to tear the fragile sheets of history. The dusty air in the archives made her cough slightly, but she quickly pressed her handkerchief to her face and continued, knowing that every second counted, and that the fate of the Stonehaven estate rested upon the secrets hidden within this stone room. The legacy of her father, the honor of the Cole name, and the life of the man she loved were all bound to this singular search. Harrison held a lamp at the stone doorway, his face anxious. "Miss Cole, we do not have much time. Archibald prepares to depart for London with the fake Beatrice tomorrow morning, to sign the iron mine contract before Mayfair Society. Are you certain we will find anything here? The archives are vast, and the night is half spent. I am certain, Harrison, Marianne replied firmly, her hands moving swiftly through the papers. My father, Charles Cole, was the one who painted the miniatures for the Harrington and Vance families 15 years ago. He always recorded the unchanging features of his subjects in his technical notebooks. If the real Lady Beatrice is represented here, my father's strokes will prove it. I know his style better than anyone. After hours of searching, her hands stopped as she touched an old red velvet box deep inside a rusty iron chest. Inside was a miniature portrait of Lady Beatrice Vance at age 10 on a natural ivory plate, alongside a handwritten notebook by her father. The notebook was bound in worn brown leather, its pages yellowed but the ink still clear. Lying next to the velvet box was a time-worn letter from the late Duchess of Vance to Nathaniel's father, its paper yellowed with age. Marianne carefully opened the letter and read the elegant, slanted handwriting. My dear Harrington, I am immensely pleased with the miniature Charles Cole has executed for Beatrice. He is a true artisan, the only one who has meticulously recorded the pale red crescent birthmark behind my daughter's left ear, a natural mark Beatrice is always self-conscious about and hides beneath her hair. This portrait shall be the sacred token sent to your family to seal our betrothal. I hope it brings our families together in peace. This letter was a priceless legal and emotional document, validating the natural ivory miniature and the unique identification mark of the real Lady Beatrice, providing them with the exact evidence they needed to dismantle the impostor's claim before all of London society. Marianne used her brass magnifying glass to examine the ancient miniature portrait very carefully under the flickering light of the single candle. Under the magnification of the lens, she easily identified her father's exclusive micro-signature hidden beneath the intricate collar of Beatrice's painted dress, a tiny, beautifully engraved letter C that only a professional miniaturist would ever notice. More importantly, both the authentic portrait and her father's handwritten notebook entry described the real Lady Beatrice Vance as having a pale red, crescent-shaped birthmark located behind her left earlobe, which was a permanent congenital mark that her father had recorded in his technical logs with the exact words, Beatrice Vance crescent birthmark behind left earlobe. Marianne immediately compared this finding with the fake locket that Archibald had presented earlier that afternoon, which completely lacked any such detail. Furthermore, she knew with absolute certainty that the girl Amelia currently staying at the castle did not possess this birthmark behind her left ear. Marianne immediately brought the portrait and her father's notebook to Nathaniel's study. Seeing the exquisite miniature and hearing her explanation, Nathaniel felt an immense relief. The fog of doubt and panic was cleared by her father's brushstrokes. The details on the ivory plate were the key that unlocked his cell of doubt. Marianne, Nathaniel spoke in a raspy voice, taking her gentle hands, his storm-gray eyes filled with gratitude and deep love. Your father painted this miniature, and now his work has saved my life. I do not wish to marry any Beatrice. The only woman I want to choose as the Duchess of Stonehaven is you. I cannot bear the thought of sharing my life with anyone but the girl who brought light to my faceless world. Nathaniel drew Marianne close, pulling out a marriage settlement, drafted by Solicitor Phillips. He signed his name, transferring ownership of the Bath workshop and a significant portion of his personal assets to Marianne, officially acknowledging her as his betrothed. Marianne Cole, Nathaniel looked deep into her eyes, his voice warm and resolute. This document is my solemn promise before God. Whatever happens in London tomorrow, you are the only Duchess of my life. Let me protect you with my title, as you have protected me with your eyes. We shall not yield to Archibald. We shall go to London together and unmask their plot before the Mayfair elite. When Marianne looked at the legal documents, her heart filled with gratitude. Yet she felt anxious about Mayfair's reaction to her humble origins, and if her poor background would tarnish his noble name. Nathaniel stepped forward, holding her shoulders, looking deep into her eyes to reassure her. Marianne, this title and Stonehaven belong to me. The family council has no right to interfere. I chose you because you are the only one who helped me see through the lies, the only one I wish to entrust with my soul. Your honesty and art are far more noble than any Mayfair name. We shall stand strong. His words brought her immense strength, helping her believe in their future. Moved to tears, Marianne rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady, reassuring heartbeat of the man who dared to defy social conventions for her. She knew they must remain patient, keeping this secret until the Royal Gallery exhibition in London to expose Archibald completely, leaving him no room to escape. She carefully packed the ivory locket and the notebook into her toolkit, preparing for the journey to London the next day, under the protective care of His Grace. Chapter 9: The Exhibition of Destiny. The annual exhibition of the Royal Society took place in grand splendor at the Royal Gallery in Mayfair, London. Under the glittering light of hundreds of crystal chandeliers hanging from the high ceilings, the Mayfair elite gathered in their finest attire. The air was filled with aristocratic whispers, the rustling of lace fans, and gossip about the Harrington family. The ancient oil paintings on the crimson walls seemed to witness the final act of this drama. Lord Archibald and Lady Augusta were extremely confident. They had invited Magistrate Higgins and Dr. Warren to witness the signing of the marriage settlement between Nathaniel and the fake Lady Beatrice to secure the iron mines, seeking to legalize the seizure of the Yorkshire iron mine shares right before the eyes of the entire high society, leaving Nathaniel with absolutely no room for retreat. The guests whispered behind their fans, commenting on Marianne's bold demeanor and the Duke's silent defiance. The grand oil paintings of past kings and queens hung from the crimson walls, their silent eyes seeming to judge the drama unfolding on the floor below. The betrothal contract lay solemnly on a red velvet-covered table at the center of the exhibition hall, drawing curious and calculating stares from the surrounding crowd. Lady Augusta stood in her emerald-green silk satin gown, her black lace fan fluttering in triumph. Beside her stood Amelia, the false Lady Beatrice draped in a lavish pink silk gown, her eyes darting nervously as she looked at the assembly of nobility, her hands trembling slightly beneath her expensive lace gloves, revealing the deep, hidden panic that threatened to expose her. Nathaniel Harrington entered the exhibition gallery with the cold majesty and commanding presence of a duke. Walking beside him was not the bride arranged by Archibald, but Marianne Cole in an elegant, finely tailored teal silk gown. Her dark hair was swept up in a sophisticated style, revealing her delicate neck and proud bearing, embodying a natural dignity that completely defied her former poverty. Her unexpected presence immediately caused a wave of murmurs and whispers throughout the hall, the noble ladies turning their heads to stare and gossip about the Duke's companion. Lady Augusta stepped forward to block their path, her face contorted in sheer anger. "Nathaniel, are you mad?" Augusta hissed in a low, venomous voice, her eyes wide with shock. "You bring the daughter of the disgraced royal forger Charles Cole to this sacred signing ceremony? Do you mean to insult Lady Beatrice Vance and shame our entire family name before Magistrate Higgins and these noble guests? Dismiss this beggar girl at once." Archibald stepped up, holding the iron mine contract out with a demanding hand. "Nathaniel, sign this agreement immediately before Magistrate Higgins and Dr. Warren. You cannot delay this matter any further. Do not let Mayfair society think that the Duke of Stonehaven is a contract breaker who shuns his family duty. Your signature is required now." Nathaniel stood firm like an unyielding mountain of Yorkshire granite, his heavy black cloak perfectly still in the warm hall. He showed no fear or hesitation before his uncle's loud threats. In the tense silence of the gallery, Marianne Cole stepped forward, facing Augusta and Archibald with the calm, quiet pride of an artisan who possessed the absolute truth, holding her father's notebook in her hands. "Magistrate Higgins, gentleman of the Royal Society." Marianne's voice rang clear and firm through the gallery, silencing the whispers of the crowd. "This contract is a forgery designed to steal the Harrington family assets. The girl standing beside Lord Archibald is not Lady Beatrice Vance. This is the real miniature of Lady Beatrice painted by my father Charles Cole 15 years ago. My father meticulously recorded an immutable birthmark behind Beatrice's left ear, a pale red crescent. My father's notebook and the letter from the late Duchess of Vance confirm this detail. I challenge this lady to show her left ear to the council right now. Let the truth be seen." The gallery erupted in whispers and murmurs of shock. Archibald and Amelia turned pale as sheets. Amelia retreated in panic, trying to hide her left ear under her elaborate curls, her eyes scanning the room for an escape route. Magistrate Higgins stepped forward with a grave face, requesting Dr. Warren to check her ear before the assembly. Dr. Warren brushed back Amelia's hair, examined her ear, and declared, "There is no birthmark. Her ear is completely plain. This girl is an impostor. This is a clear fraud before the law. She has no claim to the title." When Dr. Warren made his declaration, the silence was absolute, followed by a sudden outburst of murmurs as the noble ladies fanned themselves in shock. The murmurs of the nobility grew louder, a wave of shock and indignation sweeping through the rows of gilded chairs. Lady Augusta clutched her emerald silk gown, her face pale as a ghost as she realized that all her carefully laid plans had crumbled to dust in a single moment of exposure. The proud Mayfair host was now a laughingstock before the very people she had sought to impress. The crowd gasped in shock, their murmurs turning against Archibald and Augusta. Archibald shouted, "This is a slander by the daughter of a forger. A beggar's word holds no legal weight. You cannot trust her word over ours." Nathaniel stepped forward, his black oak cane striking the stone floor like a thunderclap, instantly silencing the room. He wrapped his strong arm around Marianne's shoulder, shielding her before the entire Mayfair assembly, his storm-gray eyes flashing with cold fire as he stood ready to defend her before all of London. "My eyes may fail to recognize the faces of Mayfair, but my heart knows the hands that draw my world. Marianne Cole does not need to prove her art or her place in this room. From this night forward, her brush is the only truth I trust. She is the Duchess of Stonehaven, and anyone who dares question her name will answer to my title." Đôi mắt ta có thể không nhận diện được những khuôn mặt ở Mayfair, nhưng trái tim ta biết rõ đôi bàn tay đã vẽ nên thế giới của ta. Marianne Cole không cần phải chứng minh nghệ thuật hay vị trí của mình trong căn phòng này. Từ đêm nay trở đi, nét khó của nàng là sự thật duy nhất ta tin tưởng. Nàng là công tước phu nhân của Stonehaven, và bất kỳ ai dám nghi ngờ danh hiệu của nàng sẽ phải đối mặt với tước vị của ta. The entire gallery fell into an absolute, stunned silence under the overwhelming weight of the Duke's supreme authority. Magistrate Higgins wasted no time in ordering the Bow Street runners to immediately arrest Lord Archibald and the young impostor Amelia on serious charges of conspiracy, fraud and forgery of legal documents. Lady Augusta, her face completely pale with shock and humiliation, bowed her head and quickly vanished into the whispering crowd to escape the public judgment and ruin of Mayfair society. This dramatic reversal of fortune successfully restored the complete honor and dignity of Marianne Cole and her late father, Charles Cole, before the entire high society of London. Chapter 10. The brushstrokes of a lifetime following the shocking scandal in London, the reputation of the Harrington family was temporarily shaken, but the truth was clearly revealed. Lord Archibald Harrington was exposed for his entire fraudulent behavior regarding property before Magistrate Higgins and the Harrington Family Council in London. He was stripped of all rights to control the iron mines and trust assets related to Stonehaven, and at the same time, all of his personal assets were confiscated to compensate for the damages he had caused. Archibald was permanently exiled from London society and had to spend the final days of his life in poverty and loneliness in a small town on the northern border. Silas Croft, the corrupt art dealer, was also arrested and prosecuted, and during the subsequent trial at the Old Bailey, he confessed to his crimes under the weight of the evidence Solicitor Phillips presented, revealing the entire plot to frame Charles Cole. Lady Augusta, the effective accomplice, was also vehemently shunned by Mayfair society, forced to flee to a ruined estate in Cornwall to escape public shunning and humiliation. The next morning, at the grand hall of the ancient Stonehaven Castle, the loyal butler Harrison stood straight, his black coat neat, coldly supervising the last servants of Archibald, packing their belongings and leaving the estate. When the last carriage departed, Harrison stepped to the giant oak doors, raising his deep but majestic voice to command the servants, "Close the doors, show them out." The sound of the ancient oak doors slamming shut echoed throughout the grand hall, officially closing a dark era of lies and hypocrisy surrounding the castle, and opening a bright, warm, and peaceful chapter for the entire Stonehaven estate. The atmosphere at Stonehaven in the following days was filled with joy and excitement, preparing for the royal wedding. Under Harrison's direction, the tenants, gardeners, and assistants in the castle all happily participated in cleaning and decorating the castle, with thousands of purple lavender and white roses, the flowers with the quiet and delicate scent Marianne loved. Harrison, who always kept a stern face, now had a bright smile as he supervised the kitchen preparing for the grand feast. Marianne's joy was made even more complete when her little sister Clara was personally picked up by Harrison's carriage from London back to Yorkshire. When the carriage stopped in the castle courtyard, Clara jumped down, ran into Marianne's arms, and cried with joy, "Sister Marianne, our father has been cleared. The honor of the Cole name is restored. I cannot believe we have this day." Marianne held her sister close, tears falling from her eyes in ultimate happiness. Nathaniel stepped beside the sisters, placed his warm gloved hand on Clara's shoulder, and said gently, "Welcome to Stonehaven, Clara. From now on, this is your home. You will be educated at the best schools in London, and no one has the right to look down on your family's honor again." An unexpected letter was sent from a remote estate in Wales by the real Lady Beatrice Vance, who had secretly fled years ago to live her own artistic life. In the letter, Beatrice sent her sincerest blessings to Nathaniel and Marianne, expressing her deep gratitude to Charles Cole for painting the only honest miniature portrait of her as a child. Beatrice's confirmation completely dispelled any remaining doubts of the nobility regarding the Harrington family betrothal. 3 weeks later, a grand wedding took place at the stone church in Yorkshire, decorated with lavender and white roses. The stone chapel was filled with the warm light of hundreds of candles, reflecting off the stained glass windows that depicted ancient stories of hope and restoration. The Yorkshire nobility and tenants gathered, bowing and calling Marianne Your Grace, as she walked the red carpet in a white lace gown. The Yorkshire villagers stood along the road as the carriage passed, throwing fresh lavender petals and white rosebuds under the horses' hooves, their cheers echoing through the valley. No one looked down on her background. They respected her courage and intellect. Nathaniel stood at the altar, his gray eyes on his bride, recognizing her by her step and warm voice. As they held hands to sign the marriage register of the ancient church, gates of the valley opening to a brighter future, Nathaniel's hands were completely steady, showing no tremors or symptoms from his old injury. Marianne's gentle presence and healing love had completely quieted his damaged nerves and brought true peace to his life. Stonehaven Estate was no longer a cold, frozen fortress of isolation, but a warm, vibrant home filled with love and laughter. One warm summer afternoon, in the quiet art gallery of Stonehaven Castle, Marianne sat by the high-arched window, painting their marriage portrait on a large natural ivory plate. She painted Nathaniel with his storm-gray eyes, full of deep gentleness, looking directly at the viewer with calm confidence. Nathaniel approached her from behind, gently embracing her shoulders and softly kissing her hair, breathing in the sweet scent of lavender. "Marianne," he whispered gently, his warm, deep voice filled with a profound happiness near her ear. "This portrait is absolutely beautiful. Although I cannot see my own face in the mirror, I know with certainty that your brush has recorded the perfect truth about who I am." Marianne looked up at him, smiling brightly, her gentle hands holding his gloved hand. "Nathaniel, in this portrait you look at me with recognition. You may not see Mayfair's faces, but you will always recognize me with your heart." Indeed, Nathaniel squeezed her hand gently, his storm-gray eyes looking deep into hers with absolute devotion and sincerity. "My heart has only one face, and that is yours, Marianne, Duchess of Stonehaven. I have officially renamed the Bath Workshop Daughter and appointed your sister Clara as an apprentice to continue your father's craft, ensuring the name is respected. The legacy of your family will endure forever, and we shall paint our own beautiful future together." The warm golden sun of Yorkshire shone brightly through the ancient arched window, illuminating the gallery where two solitary souls had found each other amidst the fog of life, ready to paint a new lifetime of happiness, through their sincerity and healing love.